Sociolinguistics is the study of the relationship that is there between language and society. That is how language works in a society, in different contexts, in everyday language. A sociolinguist is a person who is interested in explaining how every individual speaks differently in different social contexts or social domains. Like for example, when you are at home you speak differently, when you are with your friends you speak differently, when you are outside the home you speak differently because you want to be accepted by the society. So the way you speak at your home, that's not the way you speak with strangers. So a sociolinguist is a person who studies all that. They are concerned with with identifying the social functions of a language. That is, what is actually a language does in a society. Like, what is the function of a language? The main function is fine to communicate, but apart from that there are many other functions that a language performs. And what are those functions that language performs? So and performing it in different social domains or social contexts. So this is what they are concerned with. A sociolinguist is a person who also will identify and study, just by looking at the language, what are the things that you can know about a society. So if you don't know the speaker of a language, if you don't know the person who's speaking, but when you hear the person, just through the information that is received by this by through the language, what are those information? For instance, what is that information? For instance, let's suppose you listen to a person who's speaking in Pashto, but the Pashto of but the way the person speaks doesn't seem like he's the native speaker. So you can guess that a person, though the person is speaking in Pashto, but through that paralinguistic factors of the way the person is speaking, you'll get to know that this person is not the native speaker. Or let's suppose a Pathan is speaking in Urdu, you get to know in seconds that the person is not Pathan, or the person first language is not Pashto, or the person's first language is Pashto. That's why he's speaking in Urdu in this way. So the mistakes of ka and ki, that is committed by the person who is not the native speaker of Urdu, or whose first language is Pashto. So this happens. A sociolinguist is a person, or sociolinguistics is the study in which you identify these things, in which you look at the reasons why this is happening. It also looks at how people convey and construct aspects of their identity through their language. So for instance, for instance, a, a, a Pashto speaker, when speaking with someone in a marketplace, the person would start speaking in Urdu, and then when he or she will get to know that the participant in the communication is also Pathan, instantly they will uh, change their communication to Pashto. And this is how they'll get to know, they'll get to establish their social identity in front of the people. So social identity and identities are formed with many ways. Like for example, someone who starts speaking in English, they want to portray their identities as someone who's very coming from a very high class family, a very educated family. So that's how we construct identities in society, through language. If you look at this example, Ray says, "Hi, mom." And the mother says, "Hi, you're late." Ray replies, "Yeah, that beep 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 kept us in again." "Mom, Nana's here." Ray, "Oh, sorry, where is she?" Now, just by looking at this example, though you don't know about Ray, who's Ray, and you don't know about their relationship, that is with the mother, but you get to know by this word mum that Ray is the son of the mother that they are communicating, and there is a presence of Nana, who is actually the grandmother. However, when you look at more deeper, you get to know that how people are influenced by the presence of someone and the way their communication changes. So even though the mother and the boy shares a very good relationship while communicating, very open relationship while communicating, that is, the boy is using swear words for a teacher in front of mother, but instantly when the mother says that your grandmother is here, not portraying the idea that your grandmother is not informing him that your grandmother is here, but trying to let him know that whatever you said was inappropriate when your grandmother is around. So saying Nana is here, and then Ray apologizes. He gets to know this. So there's this implicit meaning, underlying meaning that is there in this example. This is what we get to know when we are studying it from the perspective of sociolinguistics. So sociolinguistics studies this social studying it in the social context, how we communicate in different social contexts, and how our communication in a specific social context is influenced by the participants we are communicating to, or by the presence of someone around us. So even if you're speaking with your friend, you'll still be careful if your father is standing there, if your mother is accompanying you. So you'll be careful while you're communicating. Okay, same goes for the example number two. That is, we use different styles in different social contexts. Different style is the way you're using a language. So keeping the example of Ray in your mind, whatever he called the teacher name was replaced, or it was changed by the speaker, by Ray, to a swear word in front of mother, which is completely different when he is in the school and Ray is asked by the principal. Ray says, "Good afternoon, sir." Principal replies, "What are you doing here at this time?" And Ray replies, "Mr. Sutton kept us in, sir." So here he's using the name of the teacher rather than using swear words. So or calling him with swear words. So you can see the difference. The difference is that Ray is aware that the principal is standing in front of me and I'm replying to the principal, and I cannot call my teacher with wrong names or in front of the teacher. But it's very common that students call their teachers with different names, but obviously not in front of the teacher, not in front of the other teachers, not in front of the principal. But why is it that we do it? Because it is dependent on the social context. It is dependent on our social learnings that we have done right from the beginning. It is there embedded in our mind that we cannot do this, so we learn those social values. And this is what a sociolinguist or a sociolinguistics studies would try to find out. Okay, so we also indicate the aspects of our social identity through the way we talk. That is who we are when we are speaking. So the way you speak would not only tell us that are you Pathan, or are you, Urdu speaker, or are you Hinko speaker, but will also tell us about a lot of other things about your social background just by analyzing the way you speak. The written transcripts, because written transcript is anything that is, transcript is anything that is which is oral audio, and then you change it into written. So any thing which is spoken but then is changed into written, it would not provide us any clues of the readers in, um, in other clues. That is, other clues can be, for instance, the stress, or the stress of the words, the way you pronounce a word. So uh, you there are plenty of people who can speak in English, but when an Indian speaks in English, it's different. When a Pakistani speaks in English, it's different. When a within English speakers, if American speaks, it's different. If Australian speaks, it's different. It's if it's the British who speaks, it's different. So these are the auditory clues. Like, just by the listening, you get to know uh, about more information regarding the speaker. So um, even through the ethnicity, when you listen to the voice of a person on the call, and you get to know whether the person is male or female. So these are the auditory clues that you have about the listener, or sorry, about the reader or the speaker. So uh, unless it's not spoken, you have other information related to that. But even in written, there are ways of identifying whether the person, what is the person's gender and what is the person's ethnicity. By That is what a sociolinguist does. Um, we are going to study it in detail in later chapters. Uh, we can make a reasonable guess at Ray's age on the basis of his linguistic choices, that he's probably in his teens. That is why he's using such language. So you get to know what is the age of the person. You can say the same thing in different ways. If you read this example, you'll get to know that Margaret is a person, right? And she is called with so many different names by so many different people in different contexts. So every afternoon, my friend packs her bag and leaves her Cardiff office in southern Wales at about 5 o'clock. As she leaves, her business partner says goodbye, Margaret. He calls her with her uh, first name, and then she replies, "Goodbye, Mike." She's also calling him with the first name. But then her secretary says, "See you tomorrow." She replies, "Bye, Jill," right? With the first name, because he's the junior. And uh, uh, she's, uh, uh, she's the senior. That's why she's saying, "Bye, Jill." And then the caretaker says, "Bye, Mrs. Walker." So the caretaker is using a different name, that is Mrs. Walker. She is using a very formal way of calling her name, but then when she arrives home, she's called as Mum by the daughter, and obviously the mother would call her with different names as well. So when you look at the way how in one whole day you are called by so many names, I have given this assignment to you as well, to find and write how many names are you called with, and by whom, and in which social context are you called with those names. And why? Just the way I've explained that, because Margaret is business partner with Mike, therefore they share uh, a good relationship, and they are, equals in a way, or in office, or are friends. That's why Mike and Margaret are calling one another with their first name, but she is called she's called Mrs. Walker by the caretaker because of the difference, right? So you can go for the explanation the way I've explained here, or you can say that, mother is calling the child with the first name, or like for example in Pakistan, we call kids with beta. So you can say that it's the kind of relationship that they share. That's why they're calling with these names. Obviously, no one would call their son or daughters with Miss so whatever their name is. So, and if they do so, then there is intended meaning in that. Maybe they are being sarcastic. So you have to this is your assignment as well. You have to identify it and write it and submit it. Yes, so language provides a variety of ways of saying the same thing. The way you address someone, that is the way you call someone, the way you greet someone, it tells us a lot about what kind of relationship do you share, um, or your social identity. The way you describe things, or the way you are paying compliments, it tells us about which kind of social background you come from. And the linguistic variation can also provide social information. Linguistic variation, I've already given you the example of linguistic variation, that is the different ways of using the language. So if you are using different kind of language, that is, you're using slang language, so we know like which kind of background do you come from. And if you're using, or in the same way, when you're speaking in Urdu, and you're committing mistakes in Urdu, ka ke ki mistakes in Urdu, then we get to know that you are this giving genders uh, giving wrong gender words to the normal words. Then we get to know that you're not a native speaker of Urdu, or you're not good at Urdu. Probably you're a Pashto speaker, or your first language is different from Urdu. Okay, so in this example 4, you can see the way these two people are communicating. Just this tiny conversation that is here, that is Sam says, "You seen our Henry's new house yet? It's an Alton. So the way Sam is speaking is telling you what kind of background he's coming from. So he's using more he's missing out the H the uh, from the word, the communicate when he's communicating. However, it's very different when Jim replies, "I have indeed. I could hardly miss it, Sam. Your Henry now owns the biggest house in Halton." So from these two examples, we get to know that they both are coming from different social backgrounds, and they are definitely influenced differently throughout their lives. That is why they are using these different conversations. So for instance, I'll give you example from Pashto. So if you are, for example, coming from a very strict a very strict Pathan background, where speaking Urdu is strictly prohibited, and all your life you have not used Urdu, or you're not encouraged to speak any other language except for Pashto, then obviously your Urdu is going to be terrible. But if you have used Urdu in your life, like people living in city areas, uh, and not from villages and far-flung areas, where Pashto is spoken even in schools. So in such scenario, you'll get to know that the person is coming from which kind of social background, or what kind of social influences are there on the language choices. So the way the person is speaking, you'll get to know about their background and other information regarding them. Vocabulary or word choice is one area of linguistic variation. So the choice of the words or the kind of the vocabulary that you're using is also telling you about the speaker, as well as the other information regarding the language and the speaker as well, and the social context. So uh, linguistic variations, but linguistic variations, they that doesn't occur at just one level. That is not just not just within the vocabulary or word, that is lexical choices, but it may also occur in sounds, as I've already explained, as well as in word structure, that is morphology, and in grammar, or you can say syntax, the way the sentence structures is formed, and obviously vocabulary as well. So all these choices are the kind of information chunks, because through these choices you get to know different languages. The most obvious linguistic variation involves pronunciation and the way you pronounce a word. So you get to know that you know what is the background of the person, uh, or this person is speaking differently from the other person, and you get to know that there is a different variety of language that is spoken. So you might have heard people speaking in Pashto. I speak differently, you might speak differently, and among your friends, if you count, there are so many different dialects that are spoken. But how do you know the difference? You know the difference by the way they speak. So that is what is linguistic variation, which leads to identifying that we have different dialects there. It's the variation within the language, within the same language, and it's this variation is not based on some social background, but this variation is or it's not idealect, it's not based on individual basis, but it is based on some areas that they are coming from. If you look at this these five examples over here, these five sentences over here, all these sentences say the same thing, means they are conveying the same information. That is, you have to discard something that is rubbish, has to be thrown in the bin. But all these five sentences are said in a different way. So the sentence in so these sentences tell us about the variation. These variations are based on syntax and are based on grammar and vocabulary. The linguistic variation may also involve two different dialects as well. In other words, you can say that it is not just pronunciation, but different vocabulary choices, as well as grammatical variation, as well as morphological variation, as well as different ways of saying something based on the way you pronounce it or the way you spell it. So if it is not pronounced, then it is spelled. So if someone is writing behavior with OUR, or if someone is writing behavior with OR, you'll get to know which variation are they following. It's whether it's British or whether it's American. And there, that is what tells you that there are different styles of saying one thing, and you never repeat the same thing ever again. So if I record this, if I record a lecture once and then I give the same lecture and explain the same thing once again, I would use completely different language and completely different words, so you don't say the same thing again because the same social context may not be repeated, or the same situation is not the same. It may vary. Maybe at one time someone is sitting in front of me and another there's not, or maybe it's a recorded lecture, or maybe it's a Zoom lecture. And in every lecture it's going to be different. Sometimes people use different languages when they are communicating with different people. This is very common because if let me give you example that if for instance I am speaking with a student, so I'll try to speak in English or try to speak in Urdu rather than opting for Pashto. But when you are speak, because Pashto is a language which is the first language, and it feels that the person who speaks in the native language, like both the speakers are speaking in their native language, then it will feel as if there is some kind of affinity, some kind of bond between the two. So you might have come across this thing that when you go to a shopkeeper and you start speaking in Urdu, then they and the speaker is Pathan, then they are dealing you differently, and instantly when you change your language to Pashto, they are changed. So the way, in different situations, we choose and opt for a different language for different reasons, and that is what a sociolinguist would identify and find why one person has changed the language to another.